Hey everyone, so as promised, I'm going to be talking about the antisocial personality disorder criteria. Now remember that antisocial personality disorder includes both sociopathy and psychopathy, and I'll be talking a little bit about the differences between the two. I am going to be uploading a video about psychopathy specifically. In particular, the testing I did you can't really get diagnosed specifically for it, but you can take the testing for the criteria, and that's kind of how you differentiate between which side you fall more on, either psychopathy or sociopathy, and I tend to fall more on the psychopathy side. I can't talk. But this is just an overall overhanging umbrella term for antisocial personality disorder and getting diagnosed for that, which there is diagnostical criteria for that. And also, because there's no specific criteria for women, but there's a lot online that is being gathered to, make it more specific these days. However, for psychopathy, when you get the testing for the PCL-R testing, they do differentiate between men and male and female. The questions are the same, but I think they're kind of weeding out to see what the differences are, if any. So, the DSM, Cluster B personality disorders, criteria for antisocial personality disorder are a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others occurring since age 15 years is indicated by 3 or more of the following. 1. Failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. 2. Deceitfulness as indicated by repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. 3. Impulsivity or failure to plan ahead. 4. Irritability and aggressiveness as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. Now, a side note here, generally speaking, women are less prone to get involved with fights and assaults and things like that, although I did have an incident when I was in grade school involving when I beat another boy rather severely for sexually harassing me, and it was quite spectacular. And yeah, so that was my one time that I really let loose on somebody, and it was rather frightening even to me. And that was my one time of assaulting somebody, and he ended up in the hospital for some time, about a week. And that was the one time that I assaulted somebody. Other than that, there were a couple times when I had someone do the assaulting for me, and for the same reason. But that is more like the way females tend to handle it when they are ASPD. They have men do the work for them. So that's the difference there. But I will go on now. But the irritability and aggressiveness, that is for male and female. Reckless disregard for safety of self and others, that follows. Consistent irresponsibility as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. I myself have been able to hold jobs for very long periods of time, which interestingly enough, if you fall on the psychopathy side of the scale, they tend to be much better at holding down jobs, keeping families, masking much better, being much more consistent, and being able to kind of hide in plain sight. Whereas on the sociopathy side of the scale, they tend to be a lot less organized, and I find it harder to integrate into society and hold down jobs and all that sort of thing. So that's an interesting distinction there. My longest period of work was working as a makeup artist. I did that for 20 years. My last job was in the mental health field for about, I think it was 9 or 10 years. So let's see. 7, lack of remorse is indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. And then the individual is at least 18 years. You cannot diagnose someone with ASPD or any of these cluster B disorders before someone is 18, although you can look at conduct disorders, which can point towards different cluster B disorders, certainly. Let's see. There is evidence of conduct disorder with onset before age 15 years. And indeed, the occurrence of antisocial behavior is not exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. In other words, you can't be having an episode of another mental illness, such as bipolar or schizophrenia. So you can't be having a psychotic episode while these behaviors are occurring, because they're very much similar. Because when you're having a bipolar episode or schizophrenic episode, you could be displaying any of these symptoms or personality traits. So that is the criteria to be diagnosed for antisocial personality disorder. You can have to have 3 or more, and some people have more, some people have, just the 3 of any of those. I won't get into specifics as to which I have, but I do have more than 3. And now I'm going to read to you the differentiation, like the female sociopathy, or female ASPD, I should say, not sociopathy specifically. One would be ignoring right and wrong, seems obvious, telling lies to take advantage of others, not being sensitive or respectful to others. This is where it gets different. Using charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain or pleasure. Having a sense of superiority and being extremely opinionated. That would definitely apply to me. Having problems with the law and including in criminal behavior. I never really had problems with the law per se, but I did engage in some criminal behavior that, if I had been caught, I would have had problems with the law when I was much younger. They mirror and love bomb you in order to get information. Now that's interesting, because that is really more narcissistic behavior. And so in some ways the female ASPD has some narcissistic traits, which would kind of make sense, because women tend to be a bit different than men, and we tend to focus on personal appearance more, because society puts so much stress on appearance for women. So it kind of makes sense that we would have some more narcissistic traits. It just kind of stands to reason. Mirroring is when, so you pay very close attention to what the other person is saying, and you figure out what it is that they want and need, what's important to them, what their values are. So instead of really having a back and forth conversation, you are really not giving much information, but you're listening to what they're saying, and you mirror back to them what it is that you know what that they want by listening to them. So whatever their values are, whatever their desires are, you give that back to them, because that's what they want to hear. Whatever they want to hear, whatever they want, whatever their desires are, you're giving that back to them, so they trust you, because they think, oh, this person they're exactly like me, they're what I want or what I need. And that way you gain their trust. And then with that, you kind of do the love bombing thing, like complimentary, and through body language and through just complimentariness, and it really can hook someone. It can really reel someone in, and that way you get what you need from them, not just information, but so that you are getting information, because you're love bombing them and mirroring them, and that way you get the information as to what that person wants and needs, and then that way you draw them in. So that's what that is. They are superficially charming and demonstrate exaggerated speech or gestures which lack authenticity. So yeah, do you know anybody who's deeply and importantly charming? I'm not sure that's really a thing, but yes, ASPD women tend to be very charming, and they can have a lot of exaggerated gestures that are, I think I actually do that. I always love gestures when I speak. A woman that was a friend of my mother's used to say that I have pretty ways, which is just, I guess, my mannerisms, my gestures, my speech. It's just like a lot of charm, and I think that's very specific to ASPD women, because we are very charming. That's how we draw people in, but it lacks depth, because we lack the emotional, the emotional depth. We lack the emotional empathy thing that's going on. So they sabotage you covertly. Well, women tend to be just in general more covert as opposed to overt, because of the way that we're just built, our brains are built that way. 4, they demonstrate little to no remorse in harming others to get what they want, and they exhibit internalized misogyny. In case you're not familiar with internalized misogyny, that is the women who are kind of the, you've heard the term pick me women, who are, we're not like other girls, they're the ones who tend to be, when the men are like, oh, she's just a whore or a bitch, the women tend to be like, oh yeah, I totally agree with you on, they take the side of the men. They are the ones who tend to be, I'm having a hard time vocalizing this now because I'm very, very tired. I know exactly what internalized misogyny is. They tend to be basically women hating. They take that misogyny and they internalize it. They take it on themselves, so they also hate other women as well. And the way they display it is through jealousy of other women, also agreeing with other men when they say that women are bitches or whores, and they agree with that. They agree with that assessment. They tend to be, they insist that they're not feminist, and feminism is stupid. They just exhibit hatred towards women through the jealousy thing, not supporting other women. A lot of the times that, especially the jealousy and competition of other, with other women in order to get men. That's another form of internalized misogyny. There's lots of different ways to display internalized misogyny. There, I finally got it out. I do not believe that I have. I think I used to have a lot of internalized misogyny through being, when I was younger, kind of like the more tomboy type, and thinking that girly girls were like just stupid, and I still have that kind of sense of women who get duped by men are idiots, that kind of thing, and that's internalized misogyny, and I recognize it, and I try to fight that, because I really, especially in this climate right now, women need to get together. They need to get it together, and the only way we're gonna get over all this shit that's going on right now is if we support each other, and that's the only way. And the women they're kind of at odds with each other a lot of the time, unfortunately. So that's a whole other conversation, though. They are sadistic and enjoy inflicting pain. That can often be true with female ASPDers. The way that I dealt with that was that I was a pro-dominatrix for a while, which I think is a very healthy way of dealing with that, because it's within a controlled environment, and the person who is receiving the pain, they're the ones who control the scene. It's like, it's up to them how much they receive and when to stop and all that. It's really not up to me, and so they control everything, and I'm not, inflicting more pain than is necessary, and it's entirely up to them. So I think that's a healthy way of dealing with that sort of sadism, in terms of physical sadism, but there's also mental sadism and emotional sadism, and I can certainly partake in that, which is something I need to watch out for, certainly, especially like in relationships with like in romantic relationships in the past. I've been involved in some abusive relationships where I've been on the receiving end of abuse, but also, in retaliation, I could be very mentally and verbally cruel in return, and I'm very good at that. And that's a form of sadism too. So there you have it. The big thing about ASPD is what I've noticed, and I've read about as well, is a lot of the time you'll get, if you have parents that are narcissists, oftentimes you'll get children who are ASPD. Which is interesting, because narcissism is so overblown with, like, wild emotion and lots of extravagance of, ego and everything like that. And like I said, a lot of like overt emotion. And ASPD is all about like zero emotion and having no access to their emotion, and everything is just sort of locked down and inaccessible. And I find that really interesting, how it's like the opposite in a lot of ways. With ASPD, we have a lot of, it's all about lack of access to emotion. It's all about callousness. It's all about being unable to relate to others in any kind of meaningful way. I have another whole video about all this, and so I'm going to leave it at that. But that's the criteria. And it's, as I say, that's the kind of the umbrella criteria. There is, then you have to go to the differences between sociopathy and psychopathy, and there are differences. I have on my my tagline on the videos that I have a slash sociopathy and psychopathy as my how I kind of define myself. But more and more, as I've had some recent testing, I'm going to change that, because I really, since you can't really formally diagnose anyone with either, but you can do the testing. The formal diagnosis is ASPD, but I'm seeing more and more with the testing I've been getting, with the PCLR and the Cleckley and the hair test and all that. Although the PCLR is the one test that's kind of the gold standard right now. I test in the 99th percentile for that, which is high, and I test less high for the sociopathy tests, the testing. And so it's pretty clear to me that if I were to be diagnosed with anything within the ASPD range, it would be psychopathy. And so that's kind of what I focus on in terms of what I need to work on in myself and what my deficits are. And it does make sense, because there's a lot of we are able to feel, and there's a lot of emotional things going on under the surface. We're able to make connections with people. We're a lot more organized, a lot less chaotic, a lot more able to mask and get on in society, and be completely undetectable, as in people have no idea. In fact, someone just made a comment on my Facebook, rather snidely, like, I never noticed you manipulating anybody. Like, I guess I really didn't pay attention in class, sort of thing. And I was like, we mask. I'm surprised you don't remember that, was my comment back. And it's like, sweetheart, we were drinking buddies. You don't know me at all. But yeah, that's what we do. We are very good at faking all kinds of emotion. We are good at faking everything. Whereas people who are sociopaths tend to be like, they don't even try. They're like, I don't give a fuck, and you don't, and you're gonna know it, And that's really not me at all. And so, but that's, I was gonna save all that for another video. But yeah, the criteria for a ASPD is all right there, and I do think that it's a little bit. I always think that all these things are a little bit lacking, because really all the criteria right now is starting to change a bit for all of these things. It's becoming more homogenized in terms of everything is going to be under the umbrella of just cluster B, because there's so much crossover between all of these disorders. There's actually a lot of similarities between borderline personality disorder and ASPD, and people don't oftentimes would think that they're the opposite, and they're not. I mean, there's a lot of emotional dysregulation with the rage and the irritation, but I'll get into borderline next. I've got a lot more research to do on borderlines before I can comfortably do a little piece on that, and I've got some people to talk to first, but I'm much more comfortable with ASPD, obviously. But that's the criteria you have to meet in order to be diagnosed with ASPD currently. So I hope that was useful. This is a fairly short video compared to most of mine, but I wanted to get across to you before I sign off on this one that people who are viewed as sociopaths and psychopaths under the ASPD umbrella tend to be viewed as just completely callous, completely unable to access emotion. They're the ones who are, those are the ones who become the serial killers, yes, at their absolute worst. And as I was talking about in my narcissist video, these things exist on a spectrum. They're the ones who are at their absolute worst. You get the Jeffrey Dahmers, yes, and the Ted Bundys, absolutely. But you also get people like me who are, not at all serial killers, who have had a bit of maybe criminal history and one violent incident in their past, which was completely justified because I was being, for months and months and months sexually harassed by a fellow student, and I broke. I had one other violent incident, actually I'm remembering now. My mother was very abusive towards me, and the last time she ever laid a hand on me was when I grabbed the belt from her and hit her back with it. Again, I feel like that was justified. There was a lot of abuse in my childhood, and that's where all of these disorders come from. They are stemmed from years and years of abuse. We don't just become this way out of the blue. It's not like this out of the ether. We are born from the froth of evil, like Venus from the shell. It's not like that. Yeah, it's noisy here. I live in a big city. we became this way. These are our coping mechanisms as children. It's how we manage to survive. All children survive abuse in different ways. Generally, the more intelligent and imaginative children tend to develop cluster B personality disorders. Those are the ones who develop, DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. All those different things come from kids who are more imaginative, more intelligent. This is kind of how it happens. It's how these things are born. It's how we are born. And if we can be born this way through trauma, we can also undo a bit of the trauma through hard work, through therapy, through will, through strength of will. Once we have had enough, once we realize that we don't want to live this way anymore, it gets tiring. It gets very tiring. And at some point, some of us just decide that we don't want to do this anymore, and we do feel, we get sad, we get depressed, we get the feeling of isolation, and we want the human connection like anybody else does. It's in our biology to want connection. Every single human being on the planet wants connection, even people as damaged as we are. And that's something to keep in mind, with all the demonization that's going on, particularly with narcissism and ASPD. We get demonized a lot for being these inhuman creatures, and we really are not. And you can choose to believe that or not, but I think if you have been listening to my videos, you can probably hopefully see me as a human being, that I'm not just some murderous creature. I'm not a murderous creature. I'm a 5'5", 119-pound girl, woman, and I'm not out there poisoning people or slashing people's throats like in Gone Girl. I really am not. She's actually a really good example of a psychopath. Let me think. Is she a psychopath? Yeah, she's got good planning skills. She's a psychopath. But yeah, we're not all like that. Those are like the extreme, very extreme examples. But the psychopaths and the sociopaths that are walking around in daily life are just like going to their jobs and having families and or they're struggling at the gas station, like the sociopaths, or the ones who are like less functioning, or just having their day-to-day lives, and they're struggling along like everybody else is, and not going out there and killing people. They're just having lives like everyone else and just having a hard time of it on some level, because it's difficult to live this way. A lot of people, some people, not a lot of people, there's some people who romanticize being this way. For some reason, usually young people romanticize, like the Joker, or like our lives are like the Joker, or something weird like that. I don't know. Like it's somehow romantic to be this way, and it truly is not. It's not a fun way to be, and that's really all I can say. If you want to be this way, you think this is a fun way to be, or this is on some level like edgy and cool, and like you're trying really hard to be diagnosed with ASPD, then trust me, you're not. You just are lost and you don't really know who you are, and I suggest figuring it out some other way, because most of us who really are ASPD have been trying to hide it our entire lives, and the reason that I'm bringing it out now is because I just have been tired of it. And plus, I'm sick of looking at all the stigmas and the stupid misinformation out there, and this is why I'm coming out with it now. It's kind of like coming out of the closet, And a lot of people are, like, more people are coming out now because of the fact that there's just so much stupid misinformation, and we're sick of it. We're sick of hearing it, and sick of being stigmatized for who we are, and that's the reason that we're coming out. It's not because we're trying to glorify ourselves in any way, or trying to make ourselves look cooler or something like that. It's just not the way it is. So on that note, I'm gonna let this go, and expect some more videos soon. I recorded a whole slew of them over the last couple of days. It's noisy out there. And so yeah, I will talk to you guys soon. I hope you guys have a good night, and I'll be back. Good night.